Hey, everybody, this is Steve Tarter, another edition of Tarter Sauce, and with me today, former mayor of Peoria, Bud Grieves. Bud, welcome. And many things in your resume, former owner of the Mark Twain Hotel. What else?
Well, the nice thing is former, Steve.
Well,
it's a lot easier to be called former mayor than the current mayor.
You've done many things, and you've done them well.
Well,
and
thank you.
We appreciate you coming on because people love to hear you. Well, I mean, you got experience. I think the last time we spoke, we were talking about the platform. And down on the river, for people who don't know, because some people tune in here and are not necessarily from Peoria. Peoria built, during your time as mayor, sort of a platform because the river tends to flood, and buildings were put on that. Well, we just took the platform down, and now we're back to rebuilding the riverfront again. So here we go. Some things just happen over and over again, which is what is happening now with the water company.
20 years later.
Yeah. It's just, you know, they say history repeats itself. It certainly does. In this town, and Bud, you can explain this, every 5 years, the city has an option to buy the water company that it gave up in 1889. I say gave up, sold to private interest.
Right.
And you were there during one of those. Well, was it one or two? The 5-year periods.
Well, actually, it was the first one during my term that the 5-year came up. It was in 98.
98.
Yeah. Exactly 20 years from now.
Okay.
And Steve, I remember like it was yesterday getting a call from a senior executive of the water company, and you know about a free lunch, right? Basically, they invited me to the Peoria Country Club for a lunch. And they brought up at the lunch that there's this pesky option that is no longer valid because it was written way back in the 1800s, and they'd like to have it go away. And they offered $50,000 to the city if I could go back and convince the council to bring it up and have it in a appropriation form to have it annulled or denied. Went back and talked to my counsel, and we decided that this probably wasn't a good idea. And since it was the 5-year anniversary, we decided to exercise the option and ask for an appraisal. The water company immediately announced that they were contesting this and were going to take us to court. So we never actually got an appraisal back in 1998.
What were they taking to court? The 5-year?
The validity of the option.
Right.
Yeah.
And you were telling me, because now we're in the present time, in 2018, the CEO Council has offered $400,000 to the city for due diligence to look into the buying of the water company. And you were telling me that initially, well, before I say the city, I'm confusing the issue here. PAG, the group prior to the CEO Council, had offered money. But you were telling me that wasn't just to buy the water company, but to fight the 5-year
well, what
option.
What happened, Steve, very clearly is the water company put out an all-out offensive on us and figured that the city council would not have the backbone to ask the taxpayers for the financial resources for lawyers and whatnot to fight a protracted battle over the validity of the option. We weren't even to the point where we were exercising it. Right. We just, you know, we're saying we have the right. They're saying you do not have the right. So we were out of bullets. We didn't have anywhere to go, and PAG came forward, a group of well-meaning citizens in Peoria, and said, we will loan you $1 million to fight this thing. And if successful, and if you or a subsequent council would exercise that option, and if it would prove financially viable for you to buy it, we'd like our money back. If it is proven to be financially viable, but yet you do not act on it, then we want our money back.
Right.
Okay.
And of course, all of this is the sort of a backdrop for what's happened most recently, which is the courts have ruled over a long period of time that the city now needs to pay PAG back with interest, which now totals over $2 million, and that's sort of muddying the waters a little bit in this present debate, because now you've got folks saying, well, look, the city's already paying off from 98. How can they do it in 2018?
Right.
How do you respond to
Well,
that?
to take the story on down the line, I got off the council in 2001, and I believe it was around 2002 or 2003 that we prevailed. Going to the appellate court, the city prevailed, and lo and behold, the option was good, maintained. So 2005 comes along when it's the next time for the council to do this, and they did. They asked for an appraisal and started down the road. They got the appraisal, and it was $220 million to buy the water company. Now, here's where it gets muddy, because the contract read that if it was financially feasible at $220 million, then they would get paid back. Well, I never saw, and I don't think it was ever made public, the other half of the equation. Yes, the cost is $220 million, but what's the cash flow coming from the ratepayers in the Peoria system? And believe me, the water company guards that very secretively, okay? And the only way they would disclose that is through the appraisal process.
Right.
Well, the appraisal process was started, and I never saw, and I don't believe it ever was made public, what that number was. Because it's real simple. If you're going to pay $220 million for something, and it needs to be amortized over 20 years at, let's say, a 5% interest, you need to take in about $14 million a year. Plus, you need enough money for reserves, maintenance. Repairs.
And we know that system needs maintenance.
Yeah, and it needs constant maintenance and so on and so forth. So I don't know what that number was, but the courts did, because the courts ruled just recently in favor of PAG. So I'm guessing, and it's just a guess, that somebody made the determination that it was financially feasible back in 2005. But what our council did was back off.
And that's been the situation, I guess, ever since.
Yeah.
Where either they don't even venture, or I think 05 was the closest they came, 6-5 voted against it.
So then the city and PAG got into it legally again, and it was just ruled recently that the city did prevail. That's what I'm saying. Someone had to look at those numbers and say it was financially feasible.
Now, but as somebody who's been through this and talked to both sides and been on the council and kind of seen the whole thing from the city hall perspective, now that you're a citizen, a regular citizen, how do you look at it? When you're moving around the community, why is it important that we have that water company for the city, in your mind?
Number one, Steve, if I could put it into perspective, if water was oil and we had a chance to control our oil well, I think it would be self-explanatory.
Yeah, people would say, oh, sure.
Yeah, water is going to be like oil.
We saw Beverly Hillbillies, of course. Yeah, we go with that.
Water is going to be a very valuable resource for our area. We're already seeing fights over it out west. We sit on the San Cody Reservoir. We are blessed with an abundant source of water. Why should our water be pumped, the profits from our water be pumped out to New Jersey? I never did see that. And let's face it, the water company pays dividends. They pay $1 million plus salaries to their executives. They borrow money at a higher rate of interest than the city would be borrowing it at. There's a lot of reasons that we could run that water company cheaper, and that money would accrue to the citizens of Peoria. Let's go back. If in my era we would have exercised, that number would have probably been less than $220 million, because it was $220 million in 2005. So in '98 it might have been $180 million, $170 million. 20 years later, I've heard in the paper where the water company is claiming it's now worth $300 million.
Yeah,
that's not a bad investment.
Right.
And the $14 or $15 million amortization would be now paid off, and that money could be going into the city coffers. Yes, I think it makes a lot of sense for the city to look at it. Now, just like if you're buying a house, if we know what the price is, and our income is not enough to pay the taxes and the fees associated with owning a home, you don't buy it, and we're not out of thing.
Right.
Now, what's changed so much since when I was mayor is that a lot of very smart people have looked at this deal and said, you know what, we need to kick the tires. We need to see what it's all about. If I'd have had the CEO council behind me back in 1998, we'd have bought the water company.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and I think we had the votes to do it back then.
And amazing enough, those bonds would be well on their way to being paid off by now.
20 years, they would have been paid off.
Yeah. Wow.
Right today, and we would be getting the $15 million a year. Could the city use $15 million a year right now?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, check in on Tuesday if you want to know how the city's doing right now.
Yeah. So the bottom line is, you have to sometimes take a risk. And yes, I read the scare tactics in the paper and everything. And my gosh, how can you go into debt $300 million? Well, how can you buy a house for $200,000? You can do it if your income is sufficient to pay the mortgage. And that's really what we're looking at right now. And I hope the council at least kicks the tires. And that's the vote next Tuesday.
And, I was talking with Bob Manning, who is going to be in a story we're running on Sunday about the water company, because I think, and you know this, Bob was on the council for just one term, but while he was there, he did look at the I don't think he had the whole thing, but he got some of the numbers, and it turned him around. Yeah. He was a no vote, became a yes vote after he looked at some of the financials from Illinois American. And what he was saying was interesting. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to convince all of the board, the council at that time. They voted 6-5 against. But what he was saying was, when people kind of put this as city versus Illinois American, he said, it doesn't have to be that way, because when they contemplated in 2005 that they might own the water company, the city didn't want to run it. So they thought, we got to find somebody to run it. We go out to bid. Well, guess who was bidding on it? Illinois American.
I knew that.
And they actually liked their bid.
Yes.
Now, of course, that never came to pass. But I know there was folks in that gallery on last Tuesday, that represented Illinois American, and one of them spoke and said, we have this technology and we do all these great things, and this will all go away if the city owns it. And that's not true.
Right.
But we don't know who will own or who would run it if the city did make that move, but it could well be Illinois American.
Exactly.
And they would be paid for it.
Exactly. And the same employees, the same union, the same contract would be in place. But there's all sorts of red herrings that get thrown up. One of the things I think your listener might be interested in is the ultimate ownership of the water company. If it was with the city, and as you point out correctly, we would definitely hire professionals to run it. At least the people making the decision regarding your water, its purity and whatnot, are people that you elect.
Yeah.
The management of Illinois American is transitory. They change. And they're owned by a large utility company called American Water Works. American Water Works could easily be bought by the Chinese, the Koreans, or whatever, because it's a stock exchange company. Mm-hmm. In fact, at one point in their history, since in the last 20 years, I can't remember exactly the year, they were owned for 3 or 4 years by a German company.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah.
And one of the council people, Chuck Grab, was adamantly opposed to it. We thought it should be USA, owned.
So we have and I'm not making any prediction, but we don't know. I mean, mergers are taking place, acquisitions are taking place across the lines, and I just think the citizens of Peoria ought to know who the long-term owners of that business is.
Well, we'll see what the latest chapter in this 5-year saga is coming up on Tuesday. They haven't allowed themselves much time, because the window of opportunity ends in, I think, November 2nd.
Right.
So they'll have to make some decisions that night.
Well, hopefully they've been thinking and talking about this amongst themselves for the last year or two, because this is too big a decision. This could be one of the key decisions that this council will ever make.
Well, and don't you think it ties in, and without me knowing how it ties in, but it ties in, the city's problem with budget, which is how high can you take property tax? Right. How high can you take sales tax? And the other thing is the CSO, the combined sewer overflow, which is this huge issue that we've all been, now we have a stormwater utility, so we know about it. We see the bill. But surely there's a way of one helping the other or working that.
That's right.
And you've I was going to sort of segue into this. You yourself have become, I think, pretty involved with Riverfront and Banner.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about what you're...
I bought a large farm down there. It was an operating farm. It had a large cornfield in it, 260-acre cornfield. And basically, it borders up against Rice Lake. And there was a waterway that ran through it and spewed all sorts of chemicals and debris and whatnot into Rice Lake, ultimately into the river. And what I did is took the tile out and put a levee around the entire property and put a third of it in prairie grasses, a third of it into hardwood trees that were indigenous to the area down there, and a third of it into wetlands. And so now the ground soaks up the water, and I rediverted the creek, and basically it was a mini water management system, and I've enjoyed showing it off. In fact, I had the Bradley group, the Ollie group out
good.
this year and last spring, and educating people on what can be done in that area. Plus, it's been a lot of fun to do.
And you've, well, Banner Marsh is of course, has that, you tell me, because you're right there, has that grown, or what's been the development of Banner Marsh in recent years?
Banner Marsh was about a 6,000 acre, if I recall, strip mine. And it was purchased by the state, and the ground was improved, but the lakes remain there, and they're great fishing lakes right now. So it's they haven't added to it or anything, but they maintained it.
And it's if you take that drive, well through Bartonville and keep going, there's something very restful about going by Banner, even if you're not taking part in it. Just seeing that.
Well, one of the dreams that I have, Steve, and I'll share this with you and your listeners, is if you go down, as you said, that drive through Bartonville, you get to Kingston Mines, and then you look on your left. You're on 24 now, heading south. And you look at Banner Marsh, that's 6,000 acres. And that runs right to Banner. And then if you stay on that left and bear left and stay going down 24, there's about a 600-acre piece between me and Banner that was just purchased by the Prairie Land Conservancy, which is not the Nature Conservancy, but they're out of Quincy. And they're going to do exactly what I've done with that land. Then you've got my 400 acres. Then you have Rice Lake, which is like 8,000 acres.
Wow.
Behind me to the west is 9,000 acres of the Duck Creek area where the SoCo built originally the area. So what I'm trying to say is it's largely virgin, area that's
maintained,
untouched.
Yeah.
There's 2 or 3 large farms between the southern tip of Rice Lake and the beginning of Emaquan, which is the big project, 8,000 or 9,000 acres to the further south. And if those farms could be purchased at some point in time by an organization like the Conservancy, we could have a 38, 40-mile strip of undisturbed land the way it used to be years ago.
And it'd be great for the birds.
It'd be unbelievable. It'd be great for Peoria.
Yeah,
it would be a real magnet.
Oh, yeah. Now, one more thing, and that's we've done a we've talked to you about over the years, stories in the paper, the Earth Home development you did.
Yeah.
How's that doing? How's that going?
Not real well.
I'm sorry. Thank you for bringing that up.
I'm sorry you brought that one up, Steve. That wasn't one of my.
You can't have all success, Bud.
No.
It's only only fair.
Actually, it was fun building.
Yeah.
It was fun building.
The idea was, so people don't know what we're talking about. The idea was environmentally, the energy costs are reduced.
Think of an eggshell, okay, and that's what it was like on the inside. It's 2 bedrooms. And then you put dirt over the top of it. And it does keep a constant temperature in the summertime of about 62, 64 degrees in there.
Without needing air conditioning?
You don't need to. We don't have any air conditioning.
Wow.
In the wintertime, you can heat it with a candle. It's very, very energy efficient. The biggest problem today with getting electricity is the load, what they charge you just to run the line there. Okay.
So why didn't that work?
Well, I just can't find a person. I guess I've tried to sell it. I do have it rented. But someone to buy it, and frankly, it's expensive to build. To be honest with you can build a lot cheaper stick building, and no one wants to go along with me and venture into something that's a little more out of their budget for something novel. Okay.
Yeah.
But we'll rent it, and it's fine the way it is.
Right. Well,
I'm not building another one though.
I'm sorry I brought that up, but no. In a way, though, it does bring out that you're looking for all kinds of ways to do the energy efficient thing, because and this was just a headline that I read online, but it was talking about we all know about the warming, the global warming, but it said here's the problem. all these air conditioners that go into service and will be going into service will only make it warmer because of the gases and everything else. So we're really stuck. So that may be somewhere along the line, that's the solution.
There is a number of solutions, I think, and it could be one of them. You're right. Just more trees. More trees, because they suck up carbon, as you know.
I sent a note when I was doing a story on the, I think one of our stories on the CSO, on the combined sewer overflow, and, just sort of go online and you see some guy with, I don't know, the tree foundation of some sort. So I sent him off the obligatory email. Hey, can you comment on this? How does it tie in? And never heard back. It was like a month and a half goes by, and suddenly he resurfaces and says, "Hey, I lost you. You got off my radar. You still want me to comment?" And I thought, "Yeah, we do. This is an ongoing thing. We do. I need to have a tree expert and tell us about it, because I think people ignore the trees that are in the city.
Exactly.
Because I know they put them up all kinds of places, but those poor things breathe in all the carbon dioxide, and they just. But boy, we need those things so badly.
Well, and down in the rainforest in Brazil, they've cleared out a lot of that to grow soybeans,
right?
Which compete against our farmers.
Oh yeah,
and they should leave the trees there.
Yeah, try telling them that though. That's the problem. Well, Bud, hey, we appreciate you coming in. You got so many ways to go. We didn't get into hotels this time. We didn't get into where the city's going, but we'll get all to that next time. We have to leave something on the table. So, but we will remind everybody that the water company issue is going to be addressed by City Council on Tuesday. And I don't know, there's a whole lot for people to do. We don't say run out and vote, but you might want to pay attention to the debate and see what goes on, because you were there and you know the importance of. Maybe talking to your council person, or just trying to bring common sense to this whole thing.
Yeah, and there's 3 or 4 council people, I think, that are sort of on the edge as to which way to go. And frankly, I see no reason, especially with the CEO council paying for it, why they wouldn't at least want to look at the deal.
Right. That sounds good. Well, once again, we thank you so much for coming by.
Okay,
and we want to thank Matt Dayhoff, who's at the controls here, gets this thing out on Facebook, and otherwise you and I would just be sitting in a closet somewhere talking. Anyway, we'll see you next time on Tarter Sauce.